This is TWiT.
The following very interesting research was originally slated to be this week's major discussion topic. But after I spent some time looking into the recently revealed ghost race problem, I wanted to talk about that instead, since it brings in some very cool fundamental computer science about the problem of race conditions, which, interestingly, in our 20 years of this podcast, well, we're in our 20th year, we've never touched on race conditions. So we're going to resolve that today. But what this team of 5 guys from ETH Zurich discovered was very interesting too. So here's that. They began asking themselves, when we go to a website that presents us with what has now become the rather generic and GDPR required cookie permission pop-ups, do sites where permission is not explicitly granted and cookie use is explicitly denied actually honor that denial? And with that open question on the table, the follow-up question was, can we arrange to create an automated process to obtain demographic information about the cookie permission handling of the top 100,000 websites? Well, we already know the answer to the second question. That's yes. They figured out how to automate this data collection. And the results of their research will be presented during the 33rd Usenix Security Symposium, which will take place this coming August 14th through the 16th in Philadelphia. Their paper is titled Automated Large-Scale Analysis of Cookie Notice Compliance. And for anyone who's interested, I have a link to their PDF research and the presentation pre-pub in the show notes. Perhaps it won't come as any shock that what they found was somewhat disappointing. Did they find that 5% of the 97,090 websites they surveyed did not obey the site's visitors' explicit denial of permission to store privacy-invading cookies? No. Was the number 10%? Nope, not that either. How about 15? Nope, still too low. Believe it or not, 65.4% of all websites tested, so just shy of fully 2/3 of all websites tested, 2/3 do not obey their visitors' explicit privacy requests. They wrote, quote, "We find that 65.4% of websites do not respect users' negative consent, and that top-ranked websites are more likely to ignore users' choice despite having seemingly more compliant cookie notices." The abstract of their paper says, privacy regulations, such as the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, require websites to inform EU-based users about non-essential data collection and to request their consent to this practice. Previous studies have documented widespread violations of these regulations. However, these studies provide a limited view of the general compliance picture. They're either restricted to a subset of notice types, detect only simple violations using prescribed patterns, or analyze notices manually. Thus, they're restricted both in their scope and in their ability to analyze violations at scale. We present the first general automated large-scale analysis of cookie notice compliance. Our method interacts with cookie notices. In other words, by navigating through their settings. It observes declared processing purposes and available consent options using natural language processing and compares them to the actual use of cookies. By virtue of the generality and scale of our analysis, we correct for the selection bias present in previous studies, focusing on specific content management platforms. We also provide a more general view of the overall compliance picture using a set of 97,000 websites popular in the EU. We report, in particular, that 65.4% of websites offering a cookie rejection option likely collect user data despite explicit negative consent. Okay, so I suppose we should not be surprised to learn that what's hiding behind the curtain is not what we would hope. 2/3 of companies in general, the larger they are, the worse is their behavior, are simply blowing off their visitors' explicit requests for privacy. And this is in the EU where the regulation is present and, would be more likely to be strongly enforced. Except who would know if this was being if the regulation was being ignored unless you checked. So not only are we now being hassled by the presence of these cookie permission banners, but 2 out of every 3 required do nothing clicks when we say we want you not to do this, they have no actual effect. The researchers discovered additional unwanted behavior, which they termed dark patterns. Specifically, 32% are missing the notice entirely. 56.7% don't have a reject button. So they display the notice, but they don't give you the required option to opt out. And then there's those 65.4% that do have the button, but they ignore it. Then there's 73.4% with implicit consent prior to interaction, meaning they assume you are consenting and they do things in 73.4% of the cases prior to giving you the option to not have them do that. There's a category, implicit consent after close, that's there in 77.5% of the instances. Undeclared purposes in 26.1%. So they don't tell you what's going on. There's interface interference in 2/3 of the cases, 67.7%. And a forced action in almost half, 46.5%. So bottom line, this is all a mess. What this means is that the true enforcement of our privacy cannot be left to lawmakers and their legislation, nor even to websites. New technology needs to be brought to bear to take this out of the hands entirely of third parties. And I know it seems insane for me to be saying this, but this really is what Google's privacy sandbox has been designed to do. And as with all change, advertisers and websites are going to be kicking and screaming, and they're not going to go down without a fight. But the advertisers are also reluctantly currently in the process of upgrading their ad delivery architectures for the privacy sandbox, because they know that with Chrome commanding 2/3 market share, they're going to have to work within this brave new world that's coming soon, and real soon, as in, later this year. Google's not messing around this time. They've given everyone years of notice. Change is coming. And I say thank goodness, because, it's obvious that just saying, you've got to get permission. Well, looks like websites, most of them, are asking for permission. It turns out 2/3 of them are ignoring it when we say no.
Hey, it's Leo Laporte. I hope you've enjoyed this little snippet from Security Now. If you want the whole show, you can get it at our website, twit.tv/SN. Of course, you can subscribe to Security Now on your favorite podcast, or just click one of the links below.